Hey, Hannah here with Delta Faucet. Today I'm going to be installing a granite undermount sink. Undermount sinks are installed from under your counter. There's no exposed mounting deck. This creates a seamless transition from sink to countertop, and it makes for an easy to clean kitchen counter. This is the Everest sink, but you can use this video to help you with any granite undermount sink from Delta. If you have a different type, check out Delta's other sink installation videos. I bet we've got you covered. A couple of things to check. First, make sure your countertop cutout and cabinet base are large enough to accommodate the size of the sink that you purchased. Note that your cabinet should be 3 inches larger than your sink to ensure the mounting clips fit properly. Also, check that the plumbing for your drain and garbage disposal will fit under the sink. And finally, it's a good idea to make sure you've got enough room to install your current faucet, or that you take the proper measurements before buying a new one. Okay, if that all checks out, grab the tools you'll need for this installation and let's get started. Some tools you may need are a drill and drill bit, silicone sealant, a screwdriver, a hammer, a tape measure, a pencil, painter's tape, some scissors, and if you're cutting your own countertop, a saw and an 1 1/4 inch hole saw, and of course, some safety glasses. The first step we're going to do is prepare to cut our countertop. Now, I worked with a countertop fabricator. I gave them this included template and the specs for my sink, and they cut my countertop to spec. If you're cutting your own countertop, the first thing you want to do is grab this included template and figure out what reveal you want to use. There's 2 options. The first option is for a 0 or flush reveal, which is this inside dotted line, so you'd cut along there. And a flush reveal is when the inside of your countertop here lines up with the inside of your sink. The second option is for a 3/8 inch positive reveal, and that's this outside line here, so you'd cut along there. And a 3/8 inch positive reveal is when you can see 3/8 inch of the lip of your sink. You can use the included accessories with either option, so it's really just a personal choice. All right, once you figured out your reveal, we're gonna set our template. Before we do that, we wanna consider all of our clearances. So you wanna make sure that you have enough room for whatever material you're using on your wall here. So I'm gonna use tile, so I wanna make sure I have enough room for that. And also making sure I have enough room for my faucet and the plumbing for my faucet and any plumbing accessories I'm going to use. You also wanna look under your countertop, make sure you have enough room to place your sink, there's no plumbing or anything in the way. So once you figured out your reveal and made sure that your clearances are all good, set your template, go ahead and cut your countertop, then we'll move on to the next step. All right, I've gone ahead and flipped my countertop upside down so the bottom is facing up. I placed a drop cloth down to protect the surface of my countertop. You're likely gonna need to grab a hand to help you. Your countertop is likely gonna be very heavy, so just make sure you do it safely. Okay, so I've got my sink upside down on my countertop, and I've lined it up and made sure it was straight. Now to do this, you can look through this drain hole here to line it up, or you can go underneath your countertop and look up from the bottom to make sure it's right where you want it. Once you've got it set, we're gonna mark the holes for our mounting brackets. So the holes are gonna go 1/4 inch away from these raised areas. You wanna consider any holes you have for your plumbing fixtures. So this one is in the way of my faucet here, so I'm gonna do about a hand's length away. So just make sure to consider that when you're marking your holes. So I'm gonna grab my tape measure here. I'm gonna make a mark 1/4 inch away from the edge of my sink. And you're gonna do 3 on the front, 3 on the back, and then 2 on each side. Now before you move on, you wanna trace an outline around the entire edge of your sink. It's gonna make it a lot easier in a few steps. When we go to apply silicone, we'll know right where to set our sink. All right, so go ahead and mark those holes, trace your sink, and we'll move on. Now it's time to drill the holes in our countertop. So I've moved our sink out of the way, and you're gonna wanna grab a 15/64 inch drill bit that's appropriate for your countertop material. You're gonna wanna drill each hole 3/8 of an inch deep. Now, pro tip here to help you figure out how deep to drill your hole, I've placed a little tape flag on my drill bit here, 3/8 of an inch up. So now when I'm drilling into my countertop, when the tape flag hits the surface of my countertop, I know that I've drilled deep enough. Okay, so when you go to drill your holes, just make sure to keep your drill straight up and down. All right, let's get to it. After you've drilled all the holes in your countertop, you wanna grab a vacuum and vacuum out each hole to make sure there's no dust inside. Now grab an anchor, it looks just like this, and you'll notice that there's a split on the anchor. You want that split to face down towards the countertop. So you're gonna start to seat the anchor in the hole, just like that. Now we're going to lightly tap it into place until it's flush with the countertop using a hammer. Now when you do this, make sure not to damage your countertop. Now you repeat the same steps for the rest of the anchors, and then we'll be ready to move on. Now we're going to install our strainer. I just think it's much easier to install the strainer now than after the sink is in. So your strainer comes assembled in the box. So the first thing you want to do is disassemble it. Then you're going to grab your strainer here and your thin gasket, and you'll place the thin gasket over the strainer, just like that, till it seats down tight to the bottom of the strainer. Now you'll place it in the hole in your sink, just like that. Now you'll grab your main body and your rubber gasket. And note that there's grooves in this main body and there's grooves on one side of the rubber gasket. So you want to line those up. Okay, just seat it like that. After you've got it seated, you want to grab your screw and take note there is a top to the screw. The top is the side with the ridge on it. We'll take our main body and place it on the bottom of our sink. And then we will thread our screw through the strainer and into the main body, and we'll hand tighten it. I'm gonna grab a flathead screwdriver to tighten it down the rest of the way. And you wanna make sure before you tighten it all the way down that you've got the strainer centered right where you want it. That's nice and snug. Now what you'll have left is a strainer cover, which we're not gonna use until the sink is fully installed. And then you'll have two options for a gasket and then a drain nut. So it's likely that your plumbing will look like one of these, either a smooth tailpiece or a flanged tailpiece. If you have a flanged tailpiece, you'll use the flanged gasket. It would be just like this. If you have the smooth tailpiece, you'll use the slip gasket with the narrow end facing up towards the sink. And again, you won't install this until you go to install your plumbing. Okay, so go ahead and get your strainer installed and then we'll move on. Now we're going to apply our silicone. Before we do that, we want to make sure our sink surface and our countertop surface are clean and dry. So we're going to apply our silicone on this outer edge on all sides of our sink. And if you chose a 3/8" positive reveal, just keep that in mind when you're applying your silicone. And if you do get any where your reveal is going to be, you could just wipe it up. Okay, now that we have our silicone applied, it's time to set our sink in place. You wanna make sure it's in the correct orientation and that we use that line that we traced earlier as our guide. This is where it may be helpful to have a second pair of hands to help you set your sink in place. All right, we've got our sink set in place and I've made sure it's in the correct orientation. Now it's time to install our mounting brackets. So the bracket looks like this. You wanna make sure the shorter curved edge is on the raised area of the sink. We're just gonna place it over that anchor that we installed earlier, then take the included screw. We're going to thread it down into that anchor, just hand tighten it, and then take a Phillips head screwdriver and tighten it down, just till it's snug. We don't wanna over tighten this. Once you've got that tightened, go ahead and do the rest of your mounting brackets, wipe up any excess silicone and let that cure according to the manufacturer's instructions, then get the help you need to flip the countertop back over and set it in place. All right, that wraps it up. I think it looks really good. If you're installing a faucet, I'm sure we've got a video for that too. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Delta's customer service. They're happy to help.